Liora Madsen plunged her hands into the heifer's mouth and held steady. The animal fought the restraint, jaw working, eyes rolling white at the edges, breath coming in sharp, panicked huffs that smelled wrong, sour, metallic, like sickness had a taste. "Don't you let her choke," Liora snapped, voice cutting clean through the chaos. Cullen Roarke's big hands tightened on the halter, and the ranch hand beside him muttered a curse as the heifer bucked again. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you." Liora didn't look up to see if Cullen listened. She didn't have the luxury. She slid 2 fingers along the heifer's tongue, feeling the slick heat, then angled her wrist and pressed the wooden handle of her spoon between the molars. Not to pry, but to keep the jaw open without breaking teeth. The heifer's throat convulsed. "There," Liora breathed, finding it. A wad of half-chewed mash and phlegm was lodged high, threatening to drop the wrong way. She hooked it with her fingers and dragged it out in one brutal pull. The heifer gagged, then drew a breath so deep it shuddered through her ribs. The barn felt like it exhaled with her. Cullen's grip loosened a fraction. He stared at Liora like she'd just reached into fire and come out unburned. "You got a habit of doing that?" he asked, low, almost rough with disbelief. "Keeping animals alive?" Liora wiped her hand on her skirt without apology. "Yes, the ranch hand Briggs, the foreman, all bone and suspicion spat into the dirt. Lucky pull. That don't fix the fever?" Leora's eyes lifted then, sharp as a drawn blade. It wasn't luck. Her tongue swollen. "Her gums are dark. That's not a simple choke." Cullen's gaze flicked to the heifer's mouth. He stepped closer, towering, but he didn't crowd her. That mattered more than he'd ever know. "What is it, then?" he asked. Liora reached into the worn leather bag at her feet, the bag that had traveled farther than most people in this territory ever would. Inside were glass vials wrapped in cloth, a tin of powder, a stitched pouch of dried herbs, a fold of clean linen. Not a lady's sewing kit, not a bride's trinkets. "A poison," Briggs scoffed. "You saying we've got rattlers in the hay?" "I'm saying something's wrong in what you're feeding them," Liora said, and the steadiness of her voice made the accusation land like a weight. "Or in the water." Cullen's jaw tightened. His eyes were a pale, hard gray that looked like it had learned to watch for trouble the way other men watch for sunrise. "We've fed them the same winter ration for years," he said. "And how many have you lost this week?" Liora asked. Silence. Cullen's throat worked. 9. Briggs cut in fast, defensive. 2 was old. 1 slipped and broke a leg. And 4 was just weak stock. That's all. Liora didn't argue with the excuses. She'd met men like Briggs on every road westman who believed pride could hold up a roof. She knelt again, placing her palm against the heifer's flank. Heat poured into her hand. The animal's breathing was shallow again, the relief brief. "She's burning," Liora murmured. Cullen's shadow fell over her. "If you can help her," he said, voice quiet now. The edge changed. "Do it. Consent, plain as that. Not a command, not a claim." Liora took a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Hold her head steady," she instructed. Briggs moved as if to refuse on instinct, but Cullen's hand snapped out and gripped the foreman's shoulder firm, not cruel. "You heard her," Cullen said. That single sentence told Liora more about the man than 10 polite introductions ever could. She uncorked a small vial and tipped a few drops into the heifer's mouth, then followed with a pinch of powdered charcoal. The mixture would bind what it could. It would buy time. Time was everything. "Where'd you learn that?" Cullen asked. "In places where you don't get second chances," Liora replied. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. Her father had raised cattle in a cold northern country before he died. She'd learned by necessity, by watching men who didn't have patience for mistakes. by doing the work that had to be done, whether or not anyone believed a woman should be doing it. The heifer swallowed with effort. Liora stroked the animal's neck once, quick, practical comfort. "Now," she said, straightening, "show me your feed." Briggs barked a laugh that held no humor. "You ain't even been here a full hour." Leora's gaze slid to him. "Then you've had a full week to watch them die." That shut him up. Cullen studied Liora as if he was remeasuring the world. "You really are the bride," he said at last. It wasn't a question. Liora felt the words in her chest, like a stone placed on a fresh bruise. Bride. Like that was all she was supposed to be. "I'm Liora Madsen," she said, keeping her voice calm. "And yes, I'm the woman you ordered from the post office like flour." Briggs bristled. "Watch your mouth." Leora's smile was small and sharp. "Or what? You'll make me sweep harder?" Cullen's lips twitched, not quite a smile. More like surprise at the idea of laughter still existing here. "I didn't order you like flour," he said. "No?" Liora lifted her chin. "Then tell me what you expected when you sent for a wife to arrive by stagecoach 2 days before Christmas." The word Christmas landed in the barn with the weight of a church bell. Cullen's gaze shifted, just for a heartbeat, to the corner where a sprig of cedar had been nailed crookily to a beam. Someone had tried. Someone had wanted a sign that this season still mattered. "I expected a chance," he said, and the honesty in it was bare. "A house with someone in it. A table that isn't silent." Liora watched him. A man could say those words and still mean, "I need a woman to hold this place together while I bleed myself out for it." "What you got instead," she said, "is a ranch that's dying. And I can't pretend it isn't." Cullen's shoulders rose and fell with a controlled breath. "Then don't pretend." That, too, told her something. He led her out of the barn and toward the feed shed. Liora walked with her bag bumping her hip, boots sinking into trampled earth, the smells of animals and sweat and old hay thick in the air. No one mentioned the stagecoach. No one mentioned the way she stepped down into a yard full of strangers and looked each one in the face like she belonged. Cullen pushed open the feed shed with one hand. The door groaned on its hinges. Inside, sacks were stacked high, and loose hay was piled against the far wall. Liora moved straight to the hay. She didn't need a sermon from anyone to know what rot looked like. She grabbed a handful, crumbled it between her fingers, and brought it close to her nose. A musty sweetness hit her mold. Her stomach tightened. "This," she said. Briggs scoffed again. "Hay's hay?" "No," Liora replied, voice flat now. "This is sickness packed into a bale." Cullen leaned in, took a handful, and sniffed. His expression didn't change, but the skin along his cheek tightened. "Smells fine," Briggs insisted. Liora turned her palm up. A fine dust clung to her skin, faintly green-gray. "Mold spores," she said. "You feed this to a weak animal. It won't just make her thin. It'll poison her." Cullen's eyes hardened. "How long has this been in here?" Briggs shifted. "Since last fall. We bought it cheap. You told me to keep costs down." Liora watched Cullen absorb that. Pride and survival wrestling behind his eyes. "We don't have money to waste," Cullen said. "I'm not asking you to waste it," Liora answered. "I'm asking you to stop feeding them death." Briggs threw his hands up. "Then what? We starve them?" Leora's mind moved fast, already building an order out of disaster. "Separate the sick," she said. "Stop mixing water troughs. Burn the worst of this hay. Feed the rest only to the strongest, and even then small amounts. And you need clean water. We got a creek," Briggs snapped. Leora's gaze swung to him. "Do you drink from it?" Briggs blinked. "Exactly," she said. Cullen stared at the hay pile like it had betrayed him. "We've lost 9, he repeated, quieter. "And you'll lose more," Liora said, "unless you act." For a moment, Cullen looked like a man being asked to admit the one thing he built his life on was failing. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. "We act." Briggs looked ready to argue, but Cullen's voice cut it off. "Jed," Cullen called toward the yard. A younger hand appeared, sun-browned, eager, fear, hiding behind a grin. "Yeah? Get the sick cows into the far corral," Cullen ordered. "Don't let 'em share water with the rest." Jed hesitated, eyes flicking to Liora, then to Briggs. Briggs' mouth tightened. Cullen's gaze didn't move. Now, Jed ran. Cullen turned back to Liora. "What else?" Liora met his eyes. There was a question behind them that went deeper than cattle. "What are you, really?" She answered the only way she knew how, with work. "I need boiling water," she said. "A clean pot." "And your ledger?" "My ledger?" "I need to know what you can afford and what you can't," Liora said. "Because if I'm going to help you save this place, I won't do it blind." Briggs let out a strangled sound. "Save this place? You barely know it." Liora stepped closer to him, not aggressive, just unshakably present. "I know dying," she said softly. "It looks the same everywhere." The foreman's face flushed. He glanced at Cullen, expecting support. Cullen's gaze stayed on Liora. "House is this way," he said. The ranch house stood not far from the barn, sturdy, plain, built by hands that cared more about survival than beauty. The porch boards were worn smooth by boots. A set of antlers hung above the door like a warning. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old wood and something faintly medicinal, as if Cullen had already been trying to fix what he didn't understand. Liora's eyes scanned the room on instinct. A rifle on hooks, a table scarred with knife marks, a shelf of tins, a small, battered Bible tucked beside a stack of papers. No lace curtains, no softness. Not because Cullen hated it, but because no one had time for softness when everything was always on the edge. Cullen went to a cupboard and pulled out a pot. "Clean?" Liora asked. He set it on the table. "As clean as it gets," Liora nodded. She didn't need perfection. She needed effort. Cullen poured water into the pot from a pitcher. "We don't have much," he said. "We'll stretch it," Liora replied. Briggs hovered in the doorway, like a storm cloud refusing to leave. Cullen glanced at him. "You got work." Briggs' jaw clenched, but he turned and left. The moment he was gone, the house felt less crowded. Cullen set the pot on the stove and built the fire with quick, practiced movements. Liora watched his hands strong, steady, scarred. A man who'd done hard things without expecting praise. He caught her watching. "You keep looking at me like you're measuring," he said. "I am," Liora admitted. "What for?" "Whether you'll let me do what needs doing," she said. Cullen held her gaze. "If it saves my ranch," he answered, "I'll let you." Liora felt the words settle into her bones. "Good," she said. "Then I'll need more than permission. I'll need your trust." His brow furrowed. "That's not something I hand out easy." "I didn't ask for easy," Liora said. The water began to simmer. Cullen crossed to the table where his papers lay stacked. He picked up a folded letter, the one that had been waiting for her like a tether. "You came from St. Louis," he said, reading the postmark again as if it might change. "That's a long ride." "It was," Liora replied. "Why?" he asked. "Why agree to this?" Liora's fingers tightened around her bag strap. She could tell him the truth, that she'd been running out of places where a woman alone could stand without being treated like a target. That she'd taken work as a midwife, a cook, a washer, anything to keep moving. That she'd grown tired of being a guest everywhere, belonging nowhere. But she didn't owe him her wounds on the first day. "I wanted land," she said instead, letting it be simple. "Not because I'm greedy. Because land means you can build something no one can take from you." Cullen's eyes narrowed slightly. "No one can take it?" Liora heard the bitterness in the question. "People try," she said. He let out a short breath. "They don't just try. They succeed." Leora's gaze flicked to the stack of papers, notes, receipts, a ledger worn thin. She saw the corner of a stamped letter, official, sharp. "What is that?" she asked. Cullen didn't look away. "The bank." Leora's pulse ticked harder. "They coming?" "Soon," Cullen said, and there was a controlled fury beneath the word. "They want their money. They don't care how the cattle are doing. They don't care it's Christmas." Leora's mouth tightened. "How much?" He hesitated. Liora held his gaze until he answered. 2,000, Cullen said. It might as well have been the moon. Liora nodded slowly. She wasn't shocked by the number. She was shocked by the fact he'd held all this alone. "And you thought a wife arriving would fix that?" she asked. Cullen's jaw worked. "I thought it would fix something." Liora looked away, focusing on the pot. The water rolled into a boil. "Then you need to stop thinking of me as a fix," she said softly. "Think of me as a partner. Or don't think of me at all." Silence stretched between them. Cullen's voice came quieter. "I don't know how to be partnered." Liora heard the admission like a crack in stone. "Then we learn," she said. She poured the boiling water over a bundle of dried willow bark and yarrow in a tin, the scent rising sharp and clean. She crushed a bit of salt into it, stirring until it dissolved. "This will help bring down fever," she said. "Not a miracle, but it'll keep some from tipping over the edge." Cullen watched her hands. "That's what you brought in your bag?" "Among other things," Liora replied. He nodded toward the bag. "Show me." Liora hesitated. Not because she feared him taking it, because showing him felt like letting him see the part of her that had survived. Still, she opened the bag. Inside were not jewels or delicate cloths. There were tools, a bone saw, needles and thread, a small bottle of whiskey for cleaning wounds, a bundle of clean bandages, a tin of powdered sulfur, a small, battered notebook filled with her own tight handwriting. Cullen stared. "That ain't a bride's dowry," he said. "It's mine," Liora answered simply. His gaze lifted to her face. "You been doing doctor work?" "Not doctor," she corrected. "Women like me don't get titles. I've helped bring babies into the world. I've set bones. I've kept people alive long enough to reach someone who could do the rest." Cullen's throat moved. "And livestock?" Liora nodded. "Livestock, too. They don't lie about pain." For a moment, Cullen looked like he didn't know what to do with the relief and awe colliding in his chest. Then he said, very carefully, "If you can keep my herd from dying, I'll give you whatever you want." Leora's eyes sharpened. "Careful," she warned. Cullen frowned. "What?" "You're about to offer me payment like I'm hired help," she said. "Or worse, like you can buy me twice." Color rose in his cheek, not anger shame. "That's not what I meant," he said. "I know," Liora replied, and the softness in her voice surprised even her. "But you need to understand something, Cullen Roarke. I didn't survive this long by becoming anyone's possession. I came here by choice. That matters." His gaze held hers, steady now, and something in it shifted respect, hardening into place like a latch. "All right," he said. "Tell me what you want." Liora took a breath. "I want to see the whole operation," she said. "Your corrals, your water, your supplies. And I want the men to listen when I speak about the animals. Not because I'm your bride. Because I'm right." Cullen didn't hesitate. "Done. And," Liora added, voice tightening, "I want honesty. If there's something you haven't told me about the bank, about neighbors, about anything, tell me now. Because secrets get ranches killed." Cullen's eyes went distant for a second. Then he nodded. "There's trouble," he said. Leora's spine went still. "Not just sickness?" she asked. Cullen's mouth flattened. 2 weeks ago, someone cut the north fence. We lost 3 head. No tracks after the creek. Like they knew how to vanish. "Rustlers," Liora said. "Or someone who wants me bleeding," Cullen replied. Liora felt cold settle in her stomach. Who? She asked. Cullen's gaze slid toward the window, toward the spread of land beyond. Wade Mercer, he said. The name sounded like a man who smiled while tightening a rope. He wants this ranch? Liora asked. He wants the water rights, Cullen said. And he wants to prove Roarke land is up for the taking. Leora's mind clicked pieces together. Cheap hay, mold, sick cattle, a cut fence. Do you think he's behind the sickness? She asked. Cullen's jaw tightened. I don't know, but I've learned not to underestimate a man who's hungry. Liora felt a pulse of anger flare sharp and clean. And we don't just treat the cattle, she said. We protect them. Cullen studied her. You willing to get caught in that? Leora's answer came without hesitation. I'm already in it. I'm standing in your kitchen. A silence fell, not awkward, heavy with understanding. Then Cullen moved, purposeful. Drink some coffee, he said. You haven't eaten. I can eat later, Liora replied. Cullen's expression hardened. No, if you're going to fight for my ranch, you do it with blood in your body. Liora blinked at the unexpected care tucked inside the command. All right, she said. He poured coffee into a tin cup and slid it across the table. Liora took it, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. Cullen grabbed the tin of willow tea and carried it toward the door. You coming? He asked. Liora stood, bag over her shoulder. Lead. They stepped back outside and crossed the yard toward the corrals. The ranch was busy in the way, a desperate place as busy men moving fast, voices clipped, animals restless. Jed and another hand were pushing coughing cows into the far corral. A calf bawled, voice thin with fear. Leora's chest tightened at the sound. She moved toward the calf without thinking. Cullen noticed. That one's been crying all morning, he said. Liora knelt near the fence, speaking softly to the calf. It pressed its nose to the rails, seeking comfort it didn't understand. You got milk for him? She asked. Cullen shook his head. Mother's down. Leora's jaw clenched. Get a bucket, she said. Warm water. And whatever grain you got that ain't touched by that hay. Jed hovered nearby, eyes wide. Ma'am. Don't ma'am me like I'm fragile, Liora said, not unkindly. Just move. Jed nodded and ran. Cullen watched her, then said quietly, You talk like you've been giving orders a long time. Liora kept her eyes on the calf. I talk like I'm tired of begging, she answered. The calf's ears twitched. Liora reached through the rails and rubbed its forehead. The animal leaned into her touch. There, she murmured. I see you. Cullen's gaze softened for a brief moment. Then he looked away as if softness was dangerous. Jed returned with a bucket and a sack of grain. Liora took the grain, scooped a handful, and mixed it into warm water until it formed thin mash. This will keep him alive, she said. Not fat, alive. She tilted the bucket and guided the calf's mouth. The calf resisted at first, then drank, desperation winning. Cullen stood beside her, quiet. You didn't have to do that, he said. Liora glanced up. Yes, I did? Cullen's jaw flexed. Most folks would have said it wasn't worth the effort. Leora's eyes hardened. Most folks aren't worth the effort, she replied. Something like a low laugh escaped him one breath, surprised. Then it was gone. Briggs strode back into the yard, face tight. You got no right telling my hands what to do, he snapped. Liora rose slowly, meeting him at full height. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself like a woman who refused to shrink. Your hands are Cullen's hands, she said. And Cullen said to listen. Briggs looked at Cullen. You letting her run this place? Cullen's gaze was steady. I'm letting her save it, he said. Briggs' expression twisted, not just anger, fear. Because if a woman could walk in and see what he'd missed, what did that say about him? Liora didn't enjoy the humiliation. She didn't want enemies. She wanted allies. She softened her voice just slightly. "Briggs," she said, "you that kept this ranch moving while Cullen fought the bank, and the land and whatever else you donned to talk about. I'm not here to take your pride. I'm here to keep your herd from dying." Briggs' eyes flickered. "Help me," Liora added. For a heartbeat, Briggs looked like he might. Then he spat again, stubborn. "Fine. Tell me what you need." It wasn't kindness. But it was a door cracked open. Liora nodded. "I need you to show me your water source." "No." Briggs hesitated, then jerked his head. "This way." They walked toward the creek that cut along the edge of the property. The water moved slow, dark in places, slick with algae near the banks. Liora crouched, scooped a handful, and let it run through her fingers. She sniffed. A faint chemical bite hit her tongue where she touched a drop to it. Her stomach tightened. "Do the cattle drink straight from this?" she asked. Briggs shrugged. "When they can." Cullen stepped closer. "What do you smell?" he asked Liora. Leora's eyes tracked along the bank. Something pale was caught in the reeds like powder, clinging to wet stems. She reached for it with a stick and lifted it. White residue, not natural. Leora's pulse quickened. "Cullen," she said quietly. He leaned closer. Liora rubbed the residue between her fingers. It felt chalky, too smooth. "Lime?" Briggs guessed. Liora shook her head slowly. "Maybe," she said. "Or something meant to look like it." Cullen's eyes narrowed. "Poison?" Liora didn't answer too quickly. She'd learned fear could become its own sickness. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I don't like it." Briggs' face tightened. "You accusing someone?" She stood, wiping her hands. "We need clean water brought in," she said. "From the well in town, if you have to. And we need to stop letting the herd drink from this until we know." Cullen's eyes went hard. "That's hauling." "It's life," Liora replied. Cullen held her gaze for a beat. Then he nodded once. "Jed," he called back toward the yard. Jed came running. "Get the wagon," Cullen ordered. "We're going to town." Briggs blinked. "Town? We got sick cattle here." Liora didn't press. She'd learned people offered truth in pieces when they were ready. Instead, she said, "I'm not here to watch you drown under it." Cullen's gaze flicked to her, surprised. "Don't make promises you can't keep," he said. "I don't," Liora replied. They reached town at dusk. Main Street was muddy, lined with false front buildings and lanterns flickering on. People moved in coats and hats, voices rising from the saloon, laughter sharp with relief. A Christmas wreath hung crookily on the door of the general store. Someone had tried here too. Cullen tied the wagon outside and glanced at Liora. You stay close, he said. I always do, Liora replied. His eyes narrowed, reading the meaning. They entered the general store. The warmth hit Liora like a wall would smoke, cinnamon, flour, and the faint sting of kerosene. The storekeeper, a round man with tired eyes, looked up. Roarke, he greeted, cautious. Cullen's jaw tightened. Elias. Elias' gaze slid to Liora. And who's this? Liora lifted her chin. Liora Madsen, she said. I'm Cullen's wife. The word wife tasted strange. Not wrong. Just heavy. Elias' eyebrows rose. Well, that's a Christmas surprise. Cullen didn't smile. I need supplies. Elias' expression tightened. Roarke, you know I can't keep extending credit. Liora felt Cullen's shoulders stiffen. He'd expected this. He'd walked in braced for it. Liora stepped forward before pride could turn the moment into a fight. What do you have for livestock fever? She asked. Elias blinked at her directness. Depends what kind. Unknown, Liora said. But mold exposure, possible contaminated water. I need charcoal, sulfur, clean bandages. And whatever you've got that's closest to an antiseptic. Elias stared. You a doctor? No, Liora answered. I'm a woman who's watched too many things die. Elias hesitated, then sighed. I got some carbolic acid. Price ain't kind. Cullen's jaw tightened. Put it on my account. Elias looked pained. Roarke, Liora turned to Cullen. Let me, she said quietly. Cullen's gaze snapped to her. No. Liora held his eyes. This isn't charity. This is investment. Cullen's nostrils flared. I'm not letting you pay for my ranch. Liora's voice stayed steady. Then let me pay for the cattle we're about to save. Because if we don't, there won't be a ranch for you to be proud of. Cullen stared at her, conflict tight in his face. Then, with visible effort, he nodded once. Liora turned to Elias. How much? Elias named a number. It made Liora's stomach twist, but she didn't flinch. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small pouch of coins, everything she'd saved from months of work. Cullen's hand shot out, stopping her wrist. Liora looked up. Cullen's eyes were hard, but there was something raw beneath. You do this, he said, and the men will say I couldn't provide. Liora's voice softened, but didn't bend. Let them talk. Let them choke on it. I didn't come here to decorate your pride. I came here to live. Cullen's fingers tightened and released. Liora paid. Elias gathered the supplies, eyes flicking between them, as if he didn't quite understand what he was witnessing. As Elias wrapped the last bundle, the bell above the store door jingled. A man stepped inside. He was tall, clean in a way that didn't belong to ranch work. His coat was dark, his boots polished. His smile was too smooth. His eyes went straight to Cullen. Well, the man drawled. If it isn't Roarke. Cullen's whole body went still. Liora felt it like the air changed. Mr. Halden, Cullen said, voice flat. The bank man's smile widened. I heard you were in town. Thought I'd save myself a trip. Leora's pulse kicked. Halden's gaze slid to her. And who might you be? Liora met his smile with a colder one. Liora Roarke, she said. Halden's eyebrows rose. Married? Today, Liora answered. Halden laughed softly. How festive. Cullen's jaw flexed. What do you want? Halden's smile stayed in place as his eyes sharpened. What I always want, Mr. Roarke. Payment. The store seemed to grow quieter. Elias looked away, pretending to rearrange a shelf. Liora watched Cullen's hands. They were steady, but she could feel the tension running through him like a wire. Not today, Cullen said. Halden shrugged. Then tomorrow, or the day after. But the note doesn't care about Christmas. Liora stepped forward, standing beside Cullen. Halden's gaze flicked to her, amused. You plan to save him, Mrs. Roarke? Halden asked. I plan to see what's owed is paid, Liora said. Halden's smile sharpened. With what? Liora didn't answer with promises. She answered with a question. If the bank takes this ranch, she said, what does it do with sick cattle? Halden blinked. If the herd dies, Liora continued, your collateral dies with it. And then you're not collecting $2,000. You're collecting nothing. Halden's eyes narrowed. Interesting logic. It's not logic, Liora said. It's fact. Halden studied her a moment longer, as if he wasn't used to women speaking to him like equals. Then he smiled again, colder. Fact is, I can take that land and sell it to Mercer by spring. He's offered a tidy sum. The name hit Liora like a slap. Cullen's jaw clenched hard enough to crack. Leora's eyes stayed on Halden. So you're not a bank man, she said softly. You're a messenger for Mercer. Halden's smile didn't waver. Careful, Mrs. Roarke. Accusations can be costly. Truth is costly, Liora replied. That's why men like you tried to buy it. Cullen's head turned slightly toward her. Surprise flickered in his eyes. Halden's gaze hardened. 2 days, he said to Cullen. Christmas or not, pay or I file. And once I file, it won't be in your hands anymore. He tipped his hat to Liora, mock polite. Merry Christmas, he said. Then he walked out. The bell jingled again, too cheerful. Cullen stood frozen for a heartbeat. Then he turned away sharply, jaw tight. Liora touched his arm lightly, not gripping, not claiming, just contact. You breathe, she murmured. Cullen's eyes flicked to her hand on his sleeve. He didn't pull away. I am breathing, he said. No, Liora replied, voice gentle but firm. You're holding your breath like you're waiting for the punch. Cullen's throat worked. Then he exhaled slowly. Elias cleared his throat awkwardly. Roarke, I'm sorry. Cullen nodded once, stiff. You got a barrel of clean water? Elias blinked. Water? Clean, Cullen repeated. From your well? Elias hesitated. That's hauling. We'll pay, Liora said. Cullen's head snapped toward her. Liora held his gaze. We will, she repeated, because we can't afford not to. Cullen's jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. Elias nodded slowly. All right. I'll have a barrel rolled out back. They loaded the wagon with the supplies and the water. The work was heavy, quick. No one spoke much. When they climbed back onto the wagon, Liora felt the weight of the bankman's words sitting on her shoulders. 2 days. She looked at Cullen. His face was set, but his eyes were burning. You didn't tell me Mercer offered to buy your debt, Liora said quietly. Cullen's grip tightened on the reins. Because it doesn't matter. It matters, Liora replied. It means he's not waiting for you to fail. He's trying to make you fail. Cullen's jaw worked. You think he's poisoning my water, he said. I think we need to assume he would, Liora answered. Cullen's gaze flicked to her, sharp. You ain't scared. Leora's mouth tightened. I'm scared all the time, she admitted. I just don't let it drive. Cullen stared at her as if that sentence unlocked something. They rode back toward the ranch in silence, the wagon creaking under the load. As the ranch came into view, Liora felt her chest tighten. Too quiet. No shouting, no cattle noise, no movement. Cullen felt it too. His posture shifted alert, predatory. He stopped the wagon hard. What is it? Liora asked. Cullen didn't answer. He jumped down, hand already on the rifle mounted under the seat. Leora's blood chilled. She climbed down carefully, keeping close. They moved toward the yard. The first thing Liora saw was Jed standing near the corral, pale, eyes wide. He looked like a boy who just watched something change into a nightmare. Cullen, Jed whispered. Cullen strode forward. What happened? Jed swallowed. We moved the sick like you said. We kept him separate. And Cullen's voice was tight. Jed pointed toward the far corral. Liora followed the line of his finger. A cow lay on her side, legs stiff, mouth foaming. Another lay near her, and another. 3. Leora's stomach dropped. Cullen's face went dead still. Briggs appeared, breath hard. "They dropped fast," he said, voice strained. "Like they got hit by lightning." Lightning. The word didn't belong. Liora moved toward the bodies, kneeling beside the nearest. She didn't touch with bare hands. She used a cloth, pulling back the lip. The gums were dark. She sniffed. A bitter almond edge prickled her senses. Her heart slammed. "That's not mold," she said quietly. Cullen's eyes snapped to her. "What is it?" Liora stood slowly, turning her head toward the water trough by the far corral. The trough sat half full. The surface had a strange sheen. Liora's pulse roared in her ears. She stepped toward it, careful, and dipped the tip of her knife into the water. She lifted it and watched the droplets. They clung thick, not normal. Liora's voice came low. "Someone dosed this." Briggs' face went pale. "You sure?" Liora's eyes were hard. "I've seen it before." Cullen's jaw clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. "Mercer," he said, the name a growl. Liora's mind raced. If Mercer had already poisoned the far trough, then the creek wasn't the only risk. The yard wasn't safe. And whoever did it knew exactly when Cullen would be gone. Liora turned sharply toward the main corral. The rest of the herd was milling, restless. A hand and other ranch worker ran up, face wild. "Boss!" he shouted. "We got smoked by the south line." Cullen's head snapped. Smoke. Leora's breath hitched. If there was fire, it meant distraction. If there was distraction, it meant someone was moving. Cullen swung toward the shout, rifle coming up. "Briggs, keep the men here," he barked. "Jed, stay with Liora." Yet's eyes widened. "Me?" "You," Cullen snapped. Then his gaze flicked to Liora, sharper and softer at once. "Stay back." Leora's chin lifted. "I don't do back," she said. Cullen's mouth tightened. "This ain't a negotiation." Liora saw the fear behind his anger. Not fear for himself. For her. It surprised her. "I'll stay where I can see," she said, voice steady. "That's all I promise." Cullen's eyes held hers for one raw second. Then he turned and ran toward the south line. Leora's heart hammered as she watched him go. Jed hovered near her, shaking. "Mom, Liora, what do we do?" Liora forced her mind into order. "Cover the trough," she said. "Don't let any animal drink." "Not one." Jed nodded, scrambling. Liora moved toward the house, not because she wanted comfort, but because her bag was there, her supplies, her proof. If Mercer was poisoning them, she needed to catch it. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. Leora's hand went instinctively to the small knife she kept in her skirt pocket. She crossed to the table. Her bag sat where she'd left it, but something else sat beside it. A folded piece of paper. Not hers. Her blood chilled. She stared at the paper as if it might bite. No one should have been in here. Slowly, she reached out and then folded it. 2 words were written in crude, dark ink. "Send her." Leora's fingers went numb. She heard a soft creak behind her, like a boot on wood. Liora didn't turn fast. She turned steady. A man stood in the doorway to the back room, half-shadowed, hat low. His hand rested near his belt. His smile was wrong. Leora's pulse slammed, because she knew, with a certainty colder than fear, that whoever had written the note wasn't. Tea finished, and Cullen Roarke was running toward smoke while the real danger stood inside his house. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Leora's breath went quiet as the man shifted in the back doorway. He filled the frame like he'd been poured into it hat brim low. Coat too clean for ranch work. posture loose with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Liora kept her hands visible. Her knife stayed hidden in her skirt pocket, a secret weight against her thigh. "You're in the wrong house," she said. His mouth curved. "Ain't no wrong house when a door's left unlocked." "It wasn't unlocked," Liora replied. That earned her a flicker surprise, then amusement, like he enjoyed that she noticed. He stepped in, boot heel whispering over the boards. Liora's gaze tracked the space between them. Table, stove, the window to the yard, her bag on the table. She mapped exits the way other women might map lace patterns. He nodded at the paper in her hand. "You read it." "2 words," Liora said. "Not much of a poet." His smile sharpened. "Mercer didn't send me to write." The name snapped into place in her mind like a latch. "Wade Mercer," she said. He tipped his head, pleased she knew it. "That's him." Liora held her face steady, but inside, cold spread through her ribs. Smoke on the south line. Poisoned trough. Cullen gone. Mercer hadn't just hit the ranch. He'd timed the hit. "What does Mercer want?" Liora asked. He shrugged, drifting closer as if the room belonged to him. "He wants you off Roarke land. Because I'm a wife?" "Because you're not acting like one," he said, eyes flicking to her bag. "Mercer heard you got skills. Heard you got Roarke listening. That changes a man's odds." Liora's fingers tightened around the note. "So you're here to drag me out like a sack of grain," she said. He laughed once. "If you make it easy." Liora let a small smile show thin, controlled. "Easy is for children and fools." His gaze slid to her hands again. "You scream, you'll regret it." "I'm not going to scream," Liora said. His shoulders loosened a fraction relief. That was his mistake. Liora moved like a snapped thread. Her hand shot to the table, grabbed the tin of carbolic acid from Elias' bundle, flipped the lid, and threw. The man jerked back with a sharp shout, hands flying to his face. Liora didn't pause to admire her work. She snatched the heavy pot from the stove still hot and drove it into his chest hard enough to stagger him. He slammed into the table. Supplies clattered. Her bag slid. Liora grabbed the broom from the wall and cracked the handle against his forearm as his hand dropped toward his belt. He hissed, furious now. Outside, the yard was distant and loud with ranch work and smoke, but no one was near enough. Liora tore the door open and shouted, "Jed, now!" Her voice sliced across the yard. The man lunged, one hand grabbing at her sleeve. Liora twisted free, slammed her knee into his thigh, and shoved him back again. She seized the cast-iron skillet from the counter and swung not at his skull like some storybook heroine, but at his shoulder, where it stole strength instead of life. His breath punched out. He dropped to one knee. Then Jed burst in, eyes wide, holding a shovel like a prayer. He froze at the sight Liora, with the skillet raised, the stranger half blinded and raging. "Rope," Liora snapped. Back room. Jed blinked once, then moved. The man surged up with a snarl. Liora stepped inside his reach and drove the skillet into his collarbone again, enough to make him flinch and lose balance. Jed returned with rope, hands shaking. Together, they forced the man down. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't heroic. It was 2 people refusing to become victims. When the knots finally held, the stranger lay on the floor, bound, chest heaving, one eye watering, mouth twisted into a grin that didn't belong on a defeated face. Liora backed away, breath coming fast. Her hands trembled now that the danger had shape. Jed stared at her like she just pulled lightning from a jar. You, he stammered. "Get Briggs," Liora said. "Quiet, and no one drinks from any trough." "Not one animal." Jed nodded and ran. The man laughed through his teeth. "Mercer's going to enjoy hearing about you." Liora crouched, keeping space. "Name," she said. He spat. "Doesn't matter. It matters if you want to leave town alive. Liora replied softly. That made his grin falter. Before he could decide if she was bluffing, Briggs barreled in, face red with smoke and anger. Tomlin followed with a rifle. Briggs stopped short at the sight of the bound man. "What inn?" "Mercer's," Liora said. "He came for me." Briggs' eyes flashed from Liora to the man. "You hurt her?" The question hit Leora's strange concern from the very man who'd fought her orders. "I'm fine," she said. "But 3 cows aren't," Tomlin swore under his breath. Mercer's reaching bold. Leora's gaze cut to the window. Smoke still smeared the sky. "Where's Cullen?" she demanded. Briggs' jaw clenched. "South line." Leora's mind ran its quick arithmetic. Mercer wanted Cullen moving. Mercer wanted the ranch scattered. And if Mercer had a man inside the house, he had other hands somewhere. Briggs leaned over the bound man. "Who are you?" The man's eyes glittered. "None of your business." Liora moved to the table, gathered her spilled supplies with steady hands, then searched his coat pocket with a cloth between her fingers. A small sack came out, white powder dusting her cloth. Briggs' face tightened. Liora held it up. "This what you put in the trough?" The man's jaw set. "Talk," Liora said, "or the sheriff will." The man stared at her, then rasped, "Silas Kerr?" Tomlin's brows lifted. "Kerr?" Briggs' mouth went hard. "Mercer keeps dogs with names now." Silas grinned, spiteful. "Mercer keeps what wins." A shout came from outside, panicked. "Smoke's worse. Fire's moved." Jed ran past the window. Leora's stomach dropped. She stepped to the porch and scanned. The fire wasn't just fencing. It was the old haystack near the calving shed. Flames climbed like they'd been hungry for weeks. Liora turned back inside. Briggs met on the fire. Briggs hesitated, torn between the bound threat and the burning feed. Leora's voice hardened. "If that hay burns, we starve the herd. If the calving shed burns, we lose spring. Mercer's stealing your next season." Briggs swore, then snapped to Tomlin. "Ride for Cullen. Fast." Tomlin bolted. Liora pointed at Jed. "Stay with him," she said, meaning Silas. "If he moves, you don't fight. You yell." Jed nodded, pale. Liora grabbed the rifle Tomlin had left leaning by the door. She wasn't skilled with it, but she understood weight and consequence. Silas laughed. "You don't even know how to use that." Liora met his gaze. "I know how to decide," she said. Then she ran. Heat slammed into her face as she reached the haystack. Sparks whipped across the yard, landing like angry insects. Cattle bawled, stamping and circling, panic rolling through them. Men formed a bucket line, but they were chasing flame the way tired people chase grief, always behind. Cullen stood near the calving shed, face streaked with ash, sleeves rolled, voice cutting orders sharp enough to hold men together. He looked up. His eyes found her. For one heartbeat, his whole body froze. Then he strode toward her fast, and his voice came out rough with a fear he didn't know how to soften. "Where were you?" "In your house," Liora said. Cullen's gaze flicked over her, searching for damage like he could see it in the air. "What happened?" "Mercer's man tried to take me," Liora said. "He's tied up. Alive." Cullen's face went dead still. Liora didn't let him vanish into rage. "Save the shed first," she said. "You can too win a fight if you let the ranch burn while you throw punches." Cullen stared at her like she just slapped sense into him. "How?" he demanded. Liora pointed. "Don't chase flames. Starve them. Clear a strip between the stack and the shed, dirt, shovels, anything. Smother. Cut the path." Cullen's eyes narrowed, calculating, and he nodded once. "Briggs!" he roared. Briggs ran up, face slick with sweat. "Do what she says," Cullen snapped. "Clear the strip, now." Men moved. Shovels appeared. Dirt flew. Boards were hauled away. The bucket line shifted from desperate splashing to purposeful smothering. Liora joined them, hands burning, lungs aching. She passed buckets until her arms felt like stone. The heat was brutal, but her mind stayed sharp. Because Mercer's message was clear. You don't belong here. Liora answered with work. After long, violent minutes, the fire collapsed inward, the haystack folding into a roaring, glowing mound. The calving shed stayed standing. Men sagged, coughing. Cullen leaned on a fence, chest heaving, eyes scanning the yard like he expected another blade in the dark. Liora set her bucket down. Cullen's gaze locked onto her again. "Tell me," he said. "All of it?" Liora didn't embellish. She told him about the note, about Silas, about Mercer's message, about tying him up. Briggs stared as if trying to rewrite what he believed about women in his head. Cullen didn't look impressed. He looked shaken. "You could have been taken," he said, voice low. "I wasn't," Liora replied. "That's not the point," Cullen rasped. Liora felt her own delayed fear rise like a wave trying to break her knees. She swallowed it. "What is the point, then?" she asked. Cullen's jaw worked hard. "The point is, I sent for a wife because I thought I could fix loneliness with a promise." Liora watched him, heart tight. "And instead," Cullen continued, voice rough, "I brought you into my war, not to soothe him like a child, to stand beside him like an equal." "You didn't bring me," she said. "I came." Liora held his gaze. "I didn't step off that coach for safety," she said. "I stepped off because I'm tired of being a visitor in my own life. If Mercer wants to test that, he can." Cullen stared at her like he didn't know what to do with a woman who didn't he ask permission to exist. Briggs cleared his throat and pointed toward the house. "Sheriff," he muttered. "We need the sheriff," Liora nodded. Now, they went back fast. Inside, Jed sat guard over Silas, gripping the shovel with both hands. When Cullen entered, Silas lifted his head and grinned. "Roarke." Cullen's voice was low, deadly. "You picked wrong." Silas' grin widened. "Ain't my choice. Mercer's hungry." Cullen took one step forward. Liora put her hand on Cullen's sleeve. Not a grip, a reminder. Cullen looked at her, eyes burning. "Don't give Mercer what he wants," Liora said quietly. "He wants you reckless. He wants you doing something the law can use against you." Silas laughed. "She's right. Mercer loves a man who breaks himself." Cullen exhaled hard through his nose. "Jed," Cullen said, voice tight with restraint, "ride to Sheriff Callahan. Tell him Mercer's man was caught trespassing, and we have evidence of poisoning." Yet's eyes widened, but he nodded and sprinted out. Liora held up the sack of powder and the note. Silas' smile thinned. "You think paper scares Mercer?" he sneered. "No," Liora said. "But it scares people who don't like getting sued for backing sabotage." Silas blinked confused. Liora stepped closer, eyes steady. "You keep thinking this is only fists and fire," she said. "It isn't. It's money. It's papers. It's who looks guilty when the sheriff starts asking questions." Silas' jaw clenched. Footsteps on the porch. Sheriff Callahan stepped inside with his deputy, coat dusty, eyes sharp. He looked at Cullen, then at Liora, and at Silas on the floor. "Well," Callahan drawled, "Roarke Ranch sure knows how to celebrate the season." Cullen's jaw tightened. "Sheriff." Callahan's gaze slid to Liora. "And you must be the new Mrs. Roarke." "I am," Liora said. Callahan nodded once, then looked at Silas. "Name," Silas smirked. "Doesn't matter." "It matters," Liora said evenly. "He told me Silas Kerr." Callahan's eyebrows rose. "Kerr." Silas' smirk faltered. Callahan's eyes sharpened. "I've heard that name near Mercer's place." Liora handed Callahan the note and the powder, describing the dead cows, the slick sheen on the trough, the timing Cullen gone, fire set, man inside the house. Callahan listened without interrupting, face like stone. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. "Mercer's getting bold," he said. "Mercer's trying to make Cullen desperate enough to sign," Liora replied. Callahan glanced at Cullen. "You want to press charges?" Cullen's eyes flicked to Liora. She held his gaze. Callahan nodded. "All right. Kerr, you're coming with me." Silas laughed under his breath. "Mercer'll have me out by morning." Callahan leaned in, voice low. "Maybe," he said. "But then you'll owe me. And I collect debts better than Mercer thinks." Silas' grin faded. As the deputy hauled him up, Silas twisted his head toward Liora. "Mercer ain't done," he hissed. "He'll starve you out, burn you out, run you." Liora stepped close, her voice quiet as a blade sliding from a sheath. "Tell Mercer," she whispered, "I'm not leaving." Silas' eyes tightened with hate. Callahan shoved him out. When the porch went quiet again, the ranch house felt like it had been emptied of noise, but not of danger. Cullen stood in the center of the room, shoulders tight, like a man holding back a storm. Briggs shifted awkwardly. "Never thought I'd see Mercer's boy tied up in your kitchen," he muttered. Liora didn't smile. She was still shaking inside. Cullen turned to her, and his voice came rough. "You're trembling." Liora looked down at her hands. They were. She tried to still them. Cullen stepped closer, slow, careful. He didn't grab her. He offered his hand, hovering near hers, waiting. Leora's breath caught. She placed her hand in his. His palm was rough and warm, steady like the ranch posts outside. "I'm sorry," Cullen said, voice low. "For what?" Liora asked. "For not being here?" he said. "For leaving you alone." Liora swallowed. "You were fighting a fire, and you were fighting for your life in my house," Cullen replied. Liora held his gaze. "I fought," she said simply. "And I stayed." Cullen's throat moved. He nodded once, like he was accepting a truth he hadn't dared hope for. "We got 2 days," he said. Liora nodded. "Then we work like we're already out of time." Cullen's eyes narrowed. "What's your plan?" Liora spoke it clean. "Tonight we keep the herd breathing," she said. "Clean water only. Sick corral separate. Burn the worst hay. Treat fever. Watch the fences. And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow we go to town," Liora said. "Not to beg. To negotiate. We show the bank man the sheriff took Mercer's man off your property. We show him sabotage threatens his money. He'll pretend he doesn't care until he realizes Mercer's greed can cost him." Cullen's jaw tightened. "You think we can scare the bank?" "I think we can make them protect themselves," Liora replied. Briggs scoffed, but his scoff was weaker than before. Cullen stared at Liora for a long beat. "You talk like you're already rooted here," he said. "I am," Liora answered. The words were simple, but they changed the air. They worked through the night. Lanterns swung over corrals. Water barrels were hauled. The creek was blocked off. Troughs were covered. The sick cows were watched like children with fever. Liora brewed willow tea until her hands smelled like bitter medicine. She measured charcoal, mixed mash for a calf with a dead mother, and coaxed animals through the thin edge between living and lost. Cullen posted guards with rifles and lanterns, jaw tight, eyes scanning the dark like he expected Mercer himself to step out of it. Once, near midnight, Liora stepped onto the porch to breathe. Stars burned above the land, sharp and cold. Smoke still lingered in the air, but the fire had been tamed. Behind her, Cullen's boots sounded on the boards. He came to stand beside her, not touching, just present. "You regret it?" he asked. Liora glanced at him. "Regret what?" "Coming here," Cullen said. Leora's throat tightened. She told the truth. "I'm terrified," she said. "But no, I don't regret it." Cullen's shoulders lowered a fraction. He stared out over the ranch, over fences and barns and dark corrals, like he was seeing his land as something other than a burden for the first time. "Then we'll finish this," he said. Liora nodded, feeling something steady settle in her chest. "Not blind hope, choice. I didn't arrive to be saved," she said quietly. "I arrived to build." Cullen's gaze shifted to her, something raw and respectful in it. "Then build with me," he said. Liora didn't answer with a kiss or a promise that sounded pretty. She answered by stepping back inside, grabbing her bag, and returning to the corrals where the sick animals breathed in the dark. Because the ranch wasn't saved by romance. It was saved by stubborn hands, clear eyes, and two people who refused to let a bully decide the ending. And as dawn crept toward the horizon, pale and new, Liora Madsen felt it deep in her bones. Mercer had started a war, but he had misjudged the kind of woman Cullen Roarke had brought home for Christmas. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.